Hey everyone, I wanted to answer a very common question I get, which is people's objection to Bitcoin being that it will get outcompeted by some other technology that comes down the pike. Now, this was the reason when I very first heard about Bitcoin in 2014. It's the reason I didn't buy some back then, because I thought, I hear about new technologies all the time, and the best thing to do is wait to just ignore them for a few years, let the marketplace shake out, figure out what wins, and then come back and embrace the technology that finally prevails. It's the reason I never had a MySpace account, because I just waited for the marketplace to shake out till it became clear that Facebook was the winner, and then I created a Facebook account. So it turns out that money and monetary technologies do not work that way. And had I known that, I would have been the beneficiary of far more Bitcoin that I could have bought in 2014 as compared to what I could have bought in 2017 when I actually bought my first Bitcoin. So in this video, I want to go through a list of the things that are super important that are the reason Bitcoin will not be outcompeted by some other new technology that comes down the pike. All right, let's start by number one. Number one, which is super important, is its anonymous creation. It is extremely important that the technology was created by someone that we don't know who they are. Now it does not matter, but in the early stages of the technology, it actually matters a lot because, we'll get to this, decentralization is a big deal, that nobody controls it. Nobody wants to invest their hard-earned money in a technology where someone somewhere controls it and might change the rules on you. So the only reason Bitcoin could have an anonymous creation, meaning nobody knows who Satoshi Nakamoto is, the only reason that was even possible is because it was the very first cryptocurrency and nobody was paying attention. So back in 2009, 2010, and part of 2011, before Satoshi Nakamoto signed off, gifted the technology and the Bitcoin software, network code, all of that to the world, before he gifted it to the world and disappeared, nobody was paying attention. Nobody, very few people were even following Bitcoin. It barely had an even, observable price. And so there was just no reason for people to try to figure out who he was because it was such an irrelevantly small project. That is no longer the case. Cryptocurrency is a known thing. So anybody new that tries to create any new form of monetary instrument at all is not going to have the benefit of being able to stay anonymous. So anyway, it's essentially a once in a human history sort of opportunity to create something like that where nobody's paying attention. You can do it under the radar. You can work out all the bugs, you can gift it to humanity, and then you can move on without anyone ever finding out who you are. That would be nearly impossible for any other technology to replicate. And if you don't have that, you also don't have the second item, which is decentralization. It is absolutely vital that nobody is in charge of Bitcoin, that there is no single individual or company that is behind it. That is the reason people are willing to trust it with $2 trillion of value right now. The entire Bitcoin network right now is worth $2 trillion. The reason people are willing to do that, the reason I'm willing to have 97% of my liquid net worth in Bitcoin, and the reason it's held in huge quantities by a huge number of people is because we know that there is no single building, there is no single individual, there is nobody that can hijack Bitcoin because it's so decentralized, meaning there's basically, it's like an organism with no head. So because there's no head, there's nothing that can go wrong because somebody, pushes the wrong button or makes the wrong decision because it's completely decentralized. All of Bitcoin is controlled by all of the people who use Bitcoin, all of the people who run Bitcoin, all the people who transact in Bitcoin. And, so you really can't get decentralization without anonymous creation, and anonymous creation is impossible in a world where everybody is now paying attention. It was only possible 16 years ago because nobody was paying attention. So decentralization is huge and virtually impossible to pull off. In fact, no other cryptocurrency has pulled it off. No other cryptocurrency has pulled off an anonymous creation or the decentralization of Bitcoin, even after 20,000 attempts over the last 16 years. So 20,000 different cryptocurrencies or smart contract platforms were introduced over the last 16 years. None of them are even remotely competitive with Bitcoin, and none of them have the anonymous creation and the decentralization of Bitcoin. Okay, next up is distribution. Distribution is who actually owns the token or the coin in this case. The value of having people own Bitcoin is that I can transact. Anywhere in the world, I can find somebody that will trade me Bitcoin for anything I need, including whatever the local currency is. So that distribution was only possible because it organically grew from nothing, little at a time, starting with cypherpunks and techno nerds and all of that, and growing and growing and growing, and eventually to encompass all of Wall Street. That distribution would be very hard to replicate. So if you started a new cryptocurrency now that was somehow supposedly better than Bitcoin, then it turns out it's almost impossible to actually get that distribution out into the marketplace because Bitcoin's already there. It is already the most powerful. It is already the most held cryptocurrency in the world. And so everybody wants to transact with people who want to transact with them, which is why money tends to settle on, a universal measure and not be sort of ultra splintered. Okay, so in addition to anonymous creation, decentralization, distribution, you have security. Bitcoin has 97%, it's actually I think up to 99%, somewhere between 97% and 99% of all of the computing power that is securing and auditing all of the cryptocurrencies in the entire world, all 20,000 of them, somewhere between 97% and 99% of that security and auditing is happening on a single cryptocurrency, just one, and that is Bitcoin. So you have a huge problem when you spin up a new technology of you have to convince a huge percentage of that security and auditing power to come over and secure and audit your network. If not, all of the people out there like me are going to say, why would I store my wealth in a cryptocurrency that's less secure than Bitcoin? I want the most powerful computer network securing what I have. And why would I allow my wealth to be held by some tiny little podunk cryptocurrency that has has almost no hash power, which is how you measure security. So Bitcoin has that. Another major consideration, item number 5, is the age of the cryptocurrency. So Bitcoin is 16 years old, 1/6. Now, I know most people feel like it's new, but it's actually 16 years old. And the probability that anything will continue into the future is heavily a function of how long it has continued in the past. There's a technical term for that. But if something's been going on for 20 years, it's much more likely to continue for 20 years than something that's only been going on for 2 years, for example. So if a new cryptocurrency starts being, somebody starts promoting it, all of the people on Wall Street who are only comfortable with Bitcoin after 16 years, you're starting that clock from scratch, trying to convince them that, hey, this thing is better than Bitcoin and you should take it seriously. And their answer is, come back to me when you're a decade and a half old. It's just, again, Bitcoin got away with it because it was unique, because it was early, because it could grow slowly, because nobody was paying attention, because it could age in a healthy, natural way, growing little by little in adoption, which, again, is not possible with any other cryptocurrency because at this point, everybody's paying attention now, which was not the case before. All right, so you've got age is on Bitcoin side. Next up, I'm going to do these in reverse order, number 7, and then I'll come back to 6. Number 7 is liquidity, which we talked a little bit about before, which is everybody wants to hold what is liquid, meaning they can buy and sell, it in whatever quantities they want. Bitcoin is extremely liquid. You can buy or sell billions of dollars of Bitcoin anytime, day or night, 24/7 without moving the market price, meaning you're not dumping so much of it into the market that the price is slipping one way or the other, or you're not buying so much of it that the price is being pushed upward by your transaction. Now, there's still some effect if you try to buy or sell more than $10 billion of Bitcoin right now, you would start to move the price, but you can get away with buying or selling anywhere from probably 2 to 4, maybe even $5 billion on the Bitcoin network without moving the price, which is extremely important for anybody that is buying or selling large volumes of the currency. Give me 1 second here. Got to cross the street. So, again, you're just not going to get large adoption of something without deep liquidity because nobody is going to want to buy large quantities of whatever it is you're selling. unless they are certain that they can buy and sell as needed without the market just locking up and becoming illiquid. All right, let's go back to item number 6, and I'll close with this one, which is the high switching cost. This is probably the most important. Well, maybe the anonymous creation and decentralization, I guess, all of those are super important too. But one thing people don't understand is that most technologies do not have any switching cost, which means there's no cost to experimenting and trying out a new technology. And as a result of that, it's very simple. Facebook, MySpace, you can just try both of them. You can have an account on both, and whichever one is more popular, whichever one wins, that one takes over. Money is not like that at all. And here's what I mean. If you want to try out a new money, you have to convert the old money into the new money. So imagine Facebook is trying to compete with MySpace, but every single user can only be on one platform, which means everybody's trying to get people on Facebook, but nobody wants to switch to Facebook because they have to unsubscribe from MySpace. That's the way money works. You cannot hold your wealth simultaneously in Bitcoin and in a new cryptocurrency. So if you start a new cryptocurrency, you've got to convince everybody to switch over to your cryptocurrency by giving up the money the wealth or the value they already store in whatever else it is that they hold. Which is why it's pretty easy for things like MySpace or the Google search engine to compete with the Yahoo search engine, things like that. Those things are relatively easy because there's no downside for somebody having two accounts, and they can always just, use whichever one more that they like. But again, money is not like that. People have to part with the old money to buy the new money, which is something they are willing to do in the case of US dollars versus Bitcoin, because there's such a radical upside benefit to Bitcoin as compared to US dollars. But as has been already proven 20,000 times, nobody's been able to come up with a cryptocurrency in the last 16 years that people are willing to put more wealth in than Bitcoin. And nothing else is even remotely close. Bitcoin is worth more, substantially more than every other cryptocurrency and every other smart contract platform combined. So again, at this point, you could certainly argue back in the first year or even maybe 2 years of Bitcoin's life that it would be possible for a rival competing cryptocurrency to gain traction. Because again, back then you probably could launch an anonymous cryptocurrency. Back then, it was so early in the Bitcoin adoption that you probably could try to do decentralization, distribution, security, and you'd be aging only a year or two behind Bitcoin, not 16 years behind Bitcoin. And you could build up the liquidity over time. And from a switching cost perspective, you could, it was so early that people were, buying $25, and it's not that hard to get people to switch from buying $25 of one thing to $25 of another thing. But again, that is just totally not where we are right now. Right now, there are $2 trillion of value stored on the Bitcoin network. It is the either 6th or 7th most valuable asset in the entire world. Gold is the largest at $18 trillion. Then there are 5 publicly traded U.S. companies. Then there's Bitcoin, and then I believe it's Saudi Aramco, the largest oil company in the world out of Saudi Arabia. Then silver, and then a bunch of other stuff. But the top 7 or 8 are gold at 18 trillion. Then 5 publicly traded companies that start in the 3 trillions and down. Bitcoin comes in at, I believe, number 6 or 7 after 5 publicly traded companies. And then you've got Saudi Aramco, and then you have silver. So Bitcoin is already one of the 6 or 7 largest assets in the entire world, and which means you've got to convince people to switch, not hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions or tens of millions or hundreds of millions or billions or tens of billions or hundreds of billions. We're past all of that. You have to convince people to swap trillions of dollars of value of Bitcoin for some other technology. So, like I say, it would not have been impossible in the first year or maybe 2 years for some other technology to outcompete Bitcoin, but we are more than a decade past the point at which that is a viable threat to Bitcoin's long-term viability. So, anyway, if that's a concern of yours, we're just way past the point at which that's a serious concern or threat to Bitcoin. So hit me with all your questions. As always, we're sitting here at 92,300, looks like, in that ballpark. as I record this. And if you have any other questions, send them my way. I love to hear them. Thanks, everyone.